Hi there, I hope you're well. In this video, I'm going to be taking a quick look at 4, maybe 5 Festool tools that were real game changers for me as I was developing my cabinet making business. That's coming up next. And welcome back. I think the term game changer gets overused these days. I've talked about all these tools that I'm going to refer to in this video before. I may have made individual videos about them. And I think I've called them all enabling tools because they enabled me to do work at a higher level. The idea for this video came about as a result of a conversation I had with a few of my YouTube members and Patreon supporters. I do a weekly video for them, and I did a video recently talking about the transition I made from professional photography, my former career, into carpentry and cabinet making and built-ins via handyman work and kitchens and bathrooms and all the usual sort of range of odds and ends that you do. And these tools, it occurred to me during that conversation that along that sort of timeline there were pivotal moments where key tools made a significant difference, and I thought it was worth just referring to them in a single video like this. We're going to go back to 2005 to start with. I'd been doing handyman type work for a few years, the usual mix of rubbish jobs that you end up doing, and I was just starting to get a little bit of cabinetry work, basic, shoe boxes and little cabinets for cover your gas or electric meter, that kind of thing. And I was using a circular saw and a clamp, and then I made a saw board to cut the sheet goods up. And it was while me and my wife were watching TV, one of those gruesome home makeover shows that always seem to be on when you're changing channels. And one of those popped up, and there's always a guy doing the handiwork, and he had a saw that ran on a rail, and I knew that I needed one of those in my life. This is 2005. It took me a little while to figure out what it was, and it was one of these. It was a Festool TS55 track saw. Now again, I bought this one in 2006, and this is the original one, 14 years old now just about, and ran for 11 years without a hitch. It died after 11 years. I did a video about that, and a set of brushes, got it back up and running again, and it's still working just as well as the day when I first bought it. I said before, these were enabling tools, and this saw with a guide rail enabled me to punch well above my weight in the cabinet making and preparing the sheet goods for cabinet work. It meant that I could compete against proper joinery firms with £20,000 panel saws and get a similar or better quality of cut. For me, just one guy in a single garage sized workshop. Quite a remarkable tool. These weren't cheap. I think I paid close to £300 for this one 14 years ago, but they're not 20 grand either. And the quality of cut that you get from this just made a huge difference, especially working with the likes of MDF and getting a real clean edge that's almost ready for paint straight away. Of course, we can't talk about the TS55 without also mentioning dust collection or dust extraction. And at the same time as I bought that one, I bought this. This is Festool's TSCtl Midi. I was all set to buy the other one, the Mini, but they launched this just at the time that I was ready to buy one. This is also, I think, from 2006, yep. And I bought it not at the same time because I didn't have the money for a after spending on the TS55, but soon after. I couldn't believe how expensive they were. I couldn't believe that anybody really spent that much money on a vacuum. But at I think £275 for the Midi as opposed to £225, something like that for the Mini, it seemed like a decent step up. 15-litre vacuum with all the usual benefits, and the big benefit for me as a one-man band running around doing bits and pieces in people's homes was that you could just stack everything up here. You could get a full cleaning kit in a sustainer. Everything was in nice and neat together, and you could just run that around up and downstairs. I have dropped this downstairs a couple of times and it still runs absolutely perfectly fine. They did have a bit of a reputation for being quite brittle in this top housing. You can see it's all a bit broken away there. But again, like the TS55, I ran this pretty much every day, and it's had an easier life for the last 4 or 5 years because I bought the CTL Sys to do the installs, and this has been dedicated to just doing the chop saw and the bandsaws. But again, a game-changing machine for me because it enabled me to work tidily in people's houses, and there's in many ways nothing better than working tidily to make people remember you and to get repeat work. So next one, we're moving up to 2008, and it's Festool's Domino. I think the Domino actually came out in 2006. We started getting it in the UK late 2007 or so, and I picked up this one, a ex-demonstrator machine, in 2008. And again, it's one of those enabling tools, one of those game changers for me, because it enabled me to massively step up the quality of the cabinet work that I was doing and yet still be useful for small joinery jobs. Again, a little bit like the track saw. I bought this with sort of sheet goods and cabinetry in mind, but the first job I did with it, in fact the job that effectively paid for it, was to make a small set of French doors for somebody. I used 10 by 50 dominoes on this door, and although the family have moved from that property now, I was there about 4 years ago and the door was holding up just fine. The Domino let me step up the game considerably, and it made me much more efficient and much more confident in my ability to make the kind of cabinet work that I could charge decent money for. Again, it's one of those things that enabled me to do a level of work which I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And I've said before in other videos, this is essentially a free tool because of Festool's annual price increases, because of the demand for a Domino, because there's nothing else like it out there. If you buy one, shop around, get a decent price on it to start with, you can keep this and use it for a few years and still get back the vast majority of the money that you lay out on it. That's the kind of demand there is for this machine. Now there are lots of other tools these days, of course, that may perform similar functions. I've used many of them. I own a couple of them. I've used the Mathel Dowler, which is an excellent machine. I have the Lamello Zeta P2, which is fantastic. There's the Peanut Jig, which is a really clever system. I've got a cheap biscuit jointer, which works really well these days. I've got a cheap dowel jig, which also works really well. But there's nothing that is quite as flexible and efficient as the Domino in my mind. I can imagine having a workshop without all kinds of tools, but I can't imagine having any kind of cabinetry workshop where I don't have a Domino to deal with those joints. So next stop on the timeline, it's 2012, and it's the MFT, Festool's multi-function table. I'd known about these for a little while. The MFT 3 had just come out, but there was no way I could afford to pay whatever the price was, £500–600 or thereabouts. I managed to find this one second-hand on eBay, not too far away. The guy did describe it as an MFT 3, so it's slightly disappointing to find it was an MFT 1080. But in fact, with the benefit of hindsight, I'm glad it was, because I do prefer the fence system and the rail arrangement on that. Again, lots of people think it's just a table with holes in, and at one level, yeah, sure, it is. But the addition of bench dogs, of course, makes it incredibly useful for setting out. And one of the things I find most useful, apart from just straight crosscuts, of course, is being able to use the back of the rail as a guide for when you're putting dominoes into the centre of a panel, because you can set it up with stops on the rail as well, so there's minimal measuring and marking required. They are expensive. When I bought mine, as I say, they were around £500 or £600 for the new version. I think I paid about 200, 220 or something like that for this. And at the time, the idea of having CNC machines, relatively affordable enough that people could knock out MFT equivalent tops for 30 or 40 pounds was just a fantasy. But that's the situation that we do find ourselves in now. I've no regrets about buying this. I think if I was starting out again, I would probably consider making my own, because we have the excellent bench dogs rail system with the fence dogs as well, and all manner of other rail dogs and things that let you get accurate straight crosscuts. I've got to say, in the workshop at least, nothing will beat a simple drop down rail like this that you can just hinge up out of the way. And I suppose we should have an honourable mention to the humble plug-it cord as well. Not a tool exactly, but certainly a game changer once you get more than one Festool tool. The plug-it cord is Festool's removable power cord, of course. It's common across all tools. And it meant that as soon as I moved on from just having a saw, when I got my domino and when I got my sanders and the other things, it meant that I could have just a hose and cord attached permanently to the workshop vacuum, and then whatever I'm doing, whether I'm sawing with the saw, sanding, routing, planing, or using the domino, I've got power and extraction to the tool every time. It's a real convenience here in the workshop, but that makes a huge difference when you're up a ladder trying to swap between two sanders, for example. And I think I'll call that done for this video. Fairly obviously, I'm concentrating on Festool tools in this video because that's what I bought. Going back to the early 2000s, those were the tools that were available to me, or the ones that made sense for me to make the purchase. These days you've got a much wider range of tools and manufacturers available that are producing tools or accessories that will produce a similar sort of functionality. And if you've got a favorite tool or accessory that was pivotal, that was a game changer for you, let me know about it down in the comments below. But I think I'll call that done for now. There are links down in the video description to everything that I've shown here today, so be sure to take a look for any additional information. But I'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a big thumbs up or leave me a comment down below. And as always, thanks so much to my Patreon pals and my YouTube members for their amazing support. I really appreciate the comments and the feedback on the behind the scenes videos, exclusive content and weekly vlogs that are just my way of saying thanks to those who do provide member support. And if it wasn't for that feedback, those conversations, videos like this wouldn't have come about. That's it for this week though. Thanks again for watching. Stay safe, take care, enjoy the holidays and the time off, and I'll see you next week.